So I'm ready for a miracle. Let's do that. It's number 346 in your songbook. If you want to follow along in the red book, 346. Otherwise, the words are up here. I'm
Ready for a miracle, ready for a miracle, I'm ready for a miracle today. I got my mind in tune for one, ready to experience one, I'm ready for a miracle today. My heart is open, ready to receive it. My heart is open, open all the way. I do accept a miracle, do accept a miracle, I do accept a miracle today. I do receive a miracle, do receive a miracle, I do receive a miracle today. I'm ready for a miracle, ready for a miracle, I'm ready for a miracle today. I got my mind in tune for one, ready to experience one, I'm ready for a miracle today. My mind is open, ready to receive it. My heart is open, open all the way. I do accept a miracle, I do accept a miracle, I do accept a miracle today. I do receive a miracle, I do receive a miracle, I do receive a miracle today.
Thank you so much.
Okay. If the prayer chaplain would bring the prayer box forward for the blessing of the prayer box.
This is our prayer box. We keep it in the back of the sanctuary so that it's there, available, for us to write our prayers down and place them in the box. They'll stay here in the box for about a month, where they'll be prayed over every Sunday. And then we send them to Unity Village, to Silent Unity, where they're prayed over for another month. And so let's enter that state of prayer now as we pause, breathing deeply. We move to that still and silent place. And from there, in gratitude, we lift up these prayers for their fulfillment to the highest good of all. And for this we say thank you, and so it is. Amen.
Amen.
Now, Shirley, are you going to come up here and do our daily word?
Well, I'm going to do my best.
I think you're going to make it.
All right. Well, you take up that cord.
Yes, we did.
Very well.
For you and me.
And I'm not going to go down those steps
No.
because I haven't had anything to drink
Sorry.
like you did. I really don't think you had anything to drink. You're just getting a little older like
Drunk on the spirit.
Yeah, there you go. The daily word is filled with positive expectation. I expect only good. Unity Minister Eric Butterworth writes in Spiritual Economics, "You do not receive what you want. You do not receive what you pray for. Not even what you say you have faith in. You will always receive what you actually expect. Each morning, even when clouds cover the sky, I expect the sun to rise. When I drift off to sleep, I expect to be awakened, refreshed. When I express the desires of my heart in prayer, are my expectations limited? I expect only good. As I pray, I discover a thought of lack or limitation. I remember that I am a living expression of God, heir to all that God is. I release the limiting thought gently and without judgment. Freed from thought of limitation, I expect only good, and my good comes to me. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Luke 12:32. Wow. That was good.
Yes, yes. Yes, it was. Make sure.
And now let's continue with our praying. Deepen our awareness and let us say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Divine source, present within us, in whom we live and move and have our being. The experience of sacred presence is our highest priority. May we allow our human ego consciousness to be guided by Christ consciousness, so that both continuously work in harmony, each performing the tasks that are best suited to it. We claim our ever-present connection to divine substance, so that our needs are bountifully fulfilled in each moment. And may we forgive ourselves even as we forgive those we encounter. We rely on loving grace to help us guard our hearts from error thinking, and lead us back to the inner stillness and peace, where there is no situation, no time, and no place where we are without the Lord's presence.
And now let us continue to move deeper in prayer. As we pause, let us breathe deeply in, holding for a moment and releasing. And as we breathe, let us relax, checking in with our bodies, from our feet, up our calves and legs, hips and trunk. Just checking in for tension, and if we find any, just allowing it to be released. As we continue to relax, we move further up our trunk to our shoulders, down our arms to our fingertips, just feeling that flow as our muscles relax. And back from our shoulders, allowing them to drop in a relaxed state, our necks and our face. Just relaxing our bodies. And as our body relaxes, so too we still our mind, allowing thoughts to come and also allowing them to go without following them. We just see it happen as we observed our muscles relaxing. Our mind moves a little deeper, closer to that silence. A little deeper, closer to that stillness. That heart place that we inherit straight from Source. Where it is that we have that connection. Where it is that the Christ light shines through us. Yes, we relax. Yes, we say yes to Spirit. We allow Spirit to move through us without obstruction, connecting us with Source, uniting us all together as one without exception in that still place, in the silence. That silent and still place. And from that still place, let us feel that perfect gratitude, the love that binds us together, big love. Grateful, grateful for one another, grateful for this place that we have to come together and meet. Grateful that we have what we need as we need it abundantly. Grateful for our wholeness. Grateful for our friends, our family, our community. Grateful for our world community that we all equally share in spirit, with no exceptions. Grateful, thankful, in gratitude for nothing at all and for everything. We say thank you. And so it is. Amen. It's a beautiful day in my consciousness. And I hope it is in yours. And if it's not, you know who can change that. I can't do it, but you sure can. It doesn't matter what's going on out there. We have the choice for what's going on in here. This microphone seems a little loud. Maybe the gain's up. So today we're talking about faith and expectation. The daily word was about expectation today. And when I first read the Daily Word, I thought, did I really read that right? And I had to go back and read it again. So I wanted to take that opportunity this morning to read a section of the Daily Word again this morning. It's the quote from Eric Butterworth. You do not receive what you want. I had to double take on that. But then if I go ahead and read the next clause, you do not receive what you pray for.
What?
Right? What?
What?
Not even when you say you have faith in. Not even what you say you have faith in. You always receive what you actually expect. So when you get that last sentence, it helps to clarify those other three clauses. You do not receive what you want, especially if you don't expect it. You do not receive what you pray for if you don't expect it. Not even what you say, and that's the key word, not what you say you have faith in. If you have faith in it, then you already expect it. The Holy Spirit is totally given, and given equally to all. But we must consciously receive it. We must expect that it will happen. Faith is one of those very difficult words to talk about. And I think it's difficult because we have so many different meanings for what faith is. Even very spiritual people who I've heard speak, they equate faith with a belief. And yes, faith is a belief. But it's more than that. Many beliefs, if you will talk to people who talk about their beliefs, it's something they say. But faith isn't something you only say, it's something that you live. To me, that's the biggest difference. And that idea of expecting what I ask for in faith to actually happen is part of living that. Paul says in Hebrews, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. You know, it's easy to have faith that this pew is right here. I can see it, I can lean on it, and I don't fall down. There are so many outer, tangible things that are there to reinforce that in my belief system. But when you talk about something like spirit, that I can't grab a hold of like that, it's difficult to actually see spirit. I mean, like, have you ever seen spirit? It's like the wind, you know. You know it's there, but you can't really see it. You can see the leaves move that the wind blew. So you can't actually see it. So faith is an assurance. You're certain. It's a certainty. You know, Webster's also says it's an excessive self-confidence. Not just a self-confidence, but excessive. That's that assurance of things hoped for. And then the word conviction. You know, conviction is what happens at court when we go and we've done something wrong, right? But conviction is also a strong persuasion or a strong belief. Not just a belief, but a strong belief. So again, it's a little bit more than just a professed belief or something I said I believed in. Because I can say something without actually believing it to be true, without having that conviction. And then what about expectation? Expectation is one of those words in the spiritual community that's sometimes a bad word. You know, you hear it said that all suffering is caused by expectation, and that if we had no expectation, we would have no suffering. So I started going, where does that come from? I've encountered that idea of expectation several times in the Gurdjieff work, which is an area of spiritual study I was in years before I found unity. You know, they teach that never expect consideration, but always give consideration. That's a whole topic and a whole sermon for itself. Okay, but there is that idea of expectation. If we expect the consideration, then we have some kind of attachment to getting it. And then if it doesn't happen, then we're disappointed and we have this suffering. We may even get angry or become afraid. There's lots of reactions we can have to an unfulfilled expectation. And I also found that a lot of this comes from Buddhism. They have Four Noble Truths in Buddhism, and the second one, I'm going to give you two different readings for that. The origin of suffering is attachment. Okay, but another reading of it is suffering exists because of unfilled expectations. So it's not that the expectation is bad, but it's the attachment to the expectation that can be negative. So when I encounter a word that might be loaded up, I like to go to the Webster's dictionary and see what Webster has to say. And so when I looked up expectation, I found a couple of things that I thought were very relevant. Basis for expecting, and that wasn't so great because it uses the word to define itself, so I wasn't real happy with that. But look behind it. They had assurance, and they capitalized it. Now, remember when we were talking about faith, it was the assurance of things hoped for. So there is, in the very definition from Paul, there is this idea of expectation. Prospect of inheritance. And that one almost gave me goosebumps when I first read it. Because where do we get our divinity? Where do we get our abundance? We inherit it straight from source. So faith gives us that inheritance. We have to claim it. How do we claim it? With our faith, with that expectation. When I gave my talk on the golden key, you know, the golden key says, stop thinking about the difficulty, no matter what it is, and think about God instead. Now, that comes from Emmett Fox. And one of Emmett's first things that he said about that is once you start thinking about God, don't look over your shoulder and look back at the problem. Expect that the problem is going to be taken care of by our focus on Spirit. And that made me think about the story in the Old Testament about Sodom and Gomorrah. When God destroyed these two cities, He instructed Lot to grab up his family and leave, and not to look back. So he gathered his family together, and they left. But his wife turned around and looked back at the destruction and turned into a pillar of salt. If we expect our faith to have this manifestation, if we expect that we can fearlessly rely on God, we don't need to turn over and look behind and keep looking at the problem. Because our minds create. So if we keep focusing on what's behind us, what we've already turned over to God, we're just attracting that back into our life. So I wanted to also talk about faith in relation to what Emily Cady says. She talks about two types of faith, a blind faith and an understanding faith. So blind faith, she says, is an instinctive trust in a power higher than ourselves. In other words, we don't have to know how it works. We don't have to know any of that stuff. All we got to do is trust. And I think back in my spiritual growth to times when I had that trust. And I'm going to relate to you a story that happened at a time before I found unity. I've been studying spiritual things because I started doing that when I was really little. I was just kicked into that early on. I had this desire, this need to find truth. But I was very naive in my ideas about truth. And I never had a real teacher, other than the School of Hard Knocks, the books that I could read. Of course, Spirit Within, and I wouldn't have made it without that. But I was in the Army. Some of y'all know I was in the Army. I was in the Reserve. So in the Army Reserve, once a year, we go on active duty for 2 weeks. And we travel somewhere and we play Army for real. And this particular summer, they call it summer camp. It ain't nothing like summer camp I had when I was in Boy Scouts.
No.
So we gathered up all of our company's equipment. We loaded it on our trucks and we drove over 800 miles to Fort Hood, Texas.
Yeah.
In Humvees and 5-ton trucks. That was an adventure in itself, just moving all of these men, trying to keep them all together, no wrong turn, right? Okay, so we got there. And we're in Fort Hood, Texas. It is hot. It is no cooler than here. If anything, it is hotter. We were out in the range in the middle of what was almost a desert. Almost a desert. And they were training us hard. We were actually paired with an active duty company. And if you've been in the Army or been around the Army, you know that the reserves, they're in the Army, but they're not really in the Army. Not when you compare them, a reservist with an active duty person. And you really get to see that when we're together. And they were hard on us. Because in the active duty world, a lot of them don't think the reservists are even in the Army. They're really not soldiers. They're what they call weekend warriors. So they were possibly extra hard on us. But they really were doing it in good intention. They wanted us to grow. We've already had this experience of Desert Storm and Desert Shield where we've gotten to see that the reservists that went over there really just weren't ready. So the Army made an active move to make us ready. Paired us up with the active duty people. And we trained. I averaged 3 or 4 hours of sleep for 2 weeks. I was the XO of this company. And we really tried hard to do these exercises and to do them well. We gave it our all. It made me proud to see the people in the company going that extra mile to perform. And then occasionally we would get together with the active duty counterparts and they would give us our score. Now the only thing that's going to go to our headquarters is what they write down on the paper. And they've been telling us that we were doing so good. But then when we got time to find out our score and what was really written down on the paper, it didn't really reflect that we did so good. And it really made us, the leadership in the reserve company, angry. Because we really take pride in our unit. We were proud of our soldiers, and we were being told that we were doing good. And then to get this report that almost says the opposite, it just didn't stick well with us. And it really didn't stick well with me. I was tired. I've been doing without sleep. And I got really, really mad. And I didn't have the spiritual principles that I have now to rein that in. But I had enough spirituality in me that I had faith. I really knew that if I set my intention on something, that it would happen. I believed it. I expected it. And I was angry at this unit. I was angry mostly at these NCOs that were told this one thing and then done another thing on paper. And a storm was coming. I could feel it in the air. And my anger, y'all are the first person I've shared this with other than Reverend Carol, okay? I'm ashamed of what happened, of what I did, okay? But it was an early manifestation because I went into that storm. My anger and that storm, we became one. And that lightning struck down and hit the tent where those active duty fellows were staying. That's not what I wanted. I was angry, and I focused my intention on those people who did that without realizing what the consequences of that would be. And that lightning hit that tent. I don't know if you know what a GP medium is.
Yes.
It's got several very large beams, big, like almost a foot square beams that run the lengths and the uprights. So they're heavy. It takes two people to pick them up. And when that lightning hit that tent, it knocked those beams down. And it hit more than one soldier, but it hit one. And he had to go to the hospital. I don't think there were no casualties, but he was most certainly injured. There were more than one injured, but one got hit in the head, and he was injured pretty bad. But I tell this story to show blind faith at work. It scared the daylights out of me because I knew there was culpability, because I knew what I was feeling. I knew what thought I was putting out there. And as that storm was brewing and becoming stronger, I was right there with it. I was mad. And then that happened, and I felt really bad. I was ashamed. I'm still ashamed of it to this day. I don't tell you that story in any pride. But I think it's an illustration of how blind faith can work. Okay, that being said, there's also this thing Emily Katie talks about, is understanding faith. Understanding faith is based on immutable principle. The immutable principles are things like the law of attraction, that our minds, what we focus our thoughts on, create in this world. So it's not blind anymore. We're aware of what mechanisms are at work in the universe that bring about the manifestation. And I have a story about that too. So I had just encountered Lessons in Truth. This is before I'd been to this church yet. But I read the whole thing through and it just resonated with me. And I began practicing the affirmations that Emily Katie has in that book. There's 4 of them. To this day, they're still in my wallet. And if we had a little more time, I'd pull them out and read them for you. But they're in the book. So I began affirming those affirmations every day. I still do. I've slightly altered them so that I only have one affirmation that combines basically what I picked out as being the best parts for me, the most meaningful parts for me. But at that time, the company that I was working for was going to close. The writing was on the wall and had been on the wall for a year or more. We just knew we weren't selling enough product to keep the thing going. There was not enough cash flow. But we were holding on, hoping we would get that contract, we would get those orders that we needed to turn it around, and it just wasn't happening. One of my brothers, it was a family business, it was owned by my mother, it was run by my brother. But we were there for a while, we were really excelling. I mean, we had worked up our sales to about $1 million a year. And that's a lot for a small company like that. There was only 4 or 5 of us working there at the time when we were the biggest. But things happened that really were beyond our control, that caused us to not have the sales that we needed. Because it's a defense. It was an aerospace fastener company, so our work depended on government contracts. Now, we weren't prime, but we depended on good prime people. So I knew it was closing. I'd been doing these affirmations. So I really wanted to work in my hometown of Arab. I didn't want to drive and commute. So I got my resume together and I sent it to every manufacturing company in town. And then I went back to work, doing my affirmations. Of course, if you read those affirmations, none of them have to do with going to work, finding a new job. None of it is directed towards finding a new job. But I totally expected to have that job. And I continued to do my affirmations. And I continued to work at this company. And I got a phone call. One phone call from Hunt Design, which is the company I'm at now. And I've been at for 8 years. It'll be 9 years in April. One phone call, they asked me to come in for an interview, and I was hired to work the next Monday. I was able to work on the weekends to help close down the aerospace company. So that there was not a day that I was without work. And I got a job in little bitty Arab, and there's not a lot of manufacturing in Arab. So I say that to point out that this just wasn't a coincidence. I only got one call, but that's all I needed was one call. I actually started out with more money than I was making at J&M. I was practicing those affirmations. I did the work. I sent out the resumes. And I expected to get a job in Arab. And I did. This is also from Emily Cady. Faith does not depend on the evidence. If it was dependent on the evidence, then I would have looked at Arab and said, there just isn't enough manufacturing in this town for me to find a job. The action of faith is infinitely higher than that of reason. We can't understand it. We don't have to understand it. It is founded on truth. While intellectual argument is founded on evidence of the senses, and so is not reliable. We hand it over to Spirit, fully expecting, without any doubt, that it will happen. Thank you.
Is that you up there?
That's you up there. That's a picture I stole from the internet.
Borrowed?
Borrowed. Yeah. All right. Blessings to you all. Have a great day, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. We're going to go and continue with the service. He's going to keep singing. I'm going to keep doing the hand thing. Don't turn yourself off. So God in Everything is the next song. We're going to stand up and sing it.
I see joy, I see peace,
goodness surrounding me. I see love in every breath I breathe. I see God in everything. I see happiness, I see freedom. I see the beauty that lives in me. I see perfection in what life brings. I see God in everything. I feel joy, I feel peace. I feel goodness surrounding me. I feel love in every breath I breathe. I feel God in everything. I feel happiness, I feel freedom. I feel the beauty that lives in me. I feel perfection in what life brings. I feel God in everything. I choose joy, I choose peace. I choose goodness surrounding me. I choose love in every breath I breathe. I choose God in everything. I choose happiness, I choose freedom. I choose the beauty that lives in me. I choose perfection in what life brings. I choose God in everything.
Change.
I know joy, I know peace. I know goodness surrounding me. I know love in every breath I breathe. I know God